Functionalist view of the role of religion. Ultimately, what we're trying to see here is how functionalists explain the role and purpose of religion in society, how it supports social order ultimately and benefits the individual. So it's a very optimistic consensus approach that sees religion as a source of harmony and beneficial for society. The starting point to understand functionalism and their views on things is to look at the Parsonian idea of the organic analogy, which basically sees society a little bit like the human body. We sometimes describe it a bit like a machine with various parts, but this is the best analogy. This society being like the human body, and the various institutions of society, of which religion is one of, is like an organ in the body, and it has particular functions to perform. The lungs have a function to perform, the heart has a function, the intestines have a function. They're all different, and each of them is specialist in what they do. They do something distinct, and without them, the human body would die. And for functionalists, religion performs specific functions that without them, we would see the collapse of society. Society has certain basic needs. Social order is one of these needs. Durkheim sometimes calls these needs functional prerequisites. There's a fancy word for you. But these are needs for society. Social order, and for them, is achieved with cooperation between people and social solidarity and integration between people. And as we're going to see, according to Durkheim and others, is exactly what religion has achieved for society. So how do we create social order? Well, ultimately it's down to achieving consensus, where society has shared norms and values. If we didn't have consensus, we'd have what Durkheim termed anomie, a state of normlessness, a state of chaos where there is no shared norms and values. But we need that, because if we didn't, there would clearly be a state of people pulling in different directions, conflict and disorder and chaos, and religion prevents this from occurring. So let's look at the ideas of Durkheim. In elementary forms of religious life, Durkheim notes that religion performs important functions of society. It binds people together, what some people call a moral glue or a social glue or a social cement. It joins them to each other. It is a source of shared values. It is sacred texts from a religion. Certain beliefs connect people together, and it is a source of identity. Durkheim focused on one example of religion with totemism, the Australian Aboriginal faith. He noted that in all societies what we have is the sacred and the profane. The sacred, first of all, are those things that are special and held in respect and awe. And there is the profane, which are the everyday, mundane, normal things. So the sacred would be strong emotions of awe and respect, and the profane are the everyday. And Durkheim was interested because he said that religion, these things are very, very special and distinct to society. They're very distinct from people. Totemism, it could have been anything from a plant, a bird, an animal that was seen to have holy qualities and was held to be sacred. It was a symbol for a community, a symbol for a clan, and a symbol of a divine spirit. And as a symbol, it was felt to be something which watched over people. It was something which would protect them, and it's something which was superior to them. But what Durkheim is getting at when looking at religion, particularly through totemism, is that when the tribe were worshipping the totem, they actually were worshipping themselves. The totem was a symbol of the clan. The totem represented their values. And if you look to religions, you look to the sacred texts, you look to, for example, the Ten Commandments. They are symbolic statements, they are values central to a culture. For him, therefore, God was society. We were worshipping not a God, but the society. And he scaled up his findings from these primitive societies and applied them to Western societies too. Durkheim was very interested in the collective conscience. He saw religion as part of a socialisation process, providing moral values and hence bringing about social stability in our lives. Together this made us all share the same conscience, the same moral values. The Ten Commandments is a primary example. And within this we also think about collective worship, where people come together and through a ceremony or through a ritual they are actually visiting a religious experience, but they're connecting together as a group. And the shared ritual, and this ultimately was crucial for society because it reinforced solidarity, it brought people together, it reminded them they were part of a group and part of a mass experience. And people are repeatedly reaffirming their support for these shared values and beliefs when they're taking part in these rituals. So if we can make these values sacred, make them special, we're more likely to obey and follow them. Think of the case of the Ten Commandments and traditional ideas about people failing in their Christian duties. If you were to behave in a way that was classed as immoral, evil, then when you come to Judgment Day, you're going to be punished, you're going to go to hell. And that gives a great deal of power to people's behaviour, because if certain forms of behaviour are going to bring with them punishment, then they're going to be avoided. So these sacred things are more likely to be followed, these values, these norms, these way of life. If it's a sin to steal, for example, Katie won't steal if she doesn't want to offend God. Religion itself is a form of secondary socialisation. So social solidarity is another of these things, shared rituals. And the way that these shared rituals are unifying and binding people together, renewing their sense of membership to the society and therefore helping the society to survive, helping it to exist over time. So shared ritualised experiences equals an awareness that as individuals we are actually insignificant and we are dependent, but together we are strong, united. So how do these reinforce the collective conscience and strengthen social solidarity? We'll ignore this ABC review for now. You might find it interesting to look up yourselves. Evaluation. If we take apart Durkheim's theory, we need to think of a couple of points we can say against it to pull it apart. Not totally throw it out of the window because there's something in it. But really, it's safe to say that religion actually can be dysfunctional for society. You know, we know that religion can divide people. We know about religious conflicts, and we know how, without citing too many examples, religion actually breaks down between differing religious factions. And there are many examples of religion being a negative force where it's been used, as Marxists and feminists argue, and even anti-racist sociologists, where it's been an instrument of oppression, working against the working class, working against women, and working against minorities. Is it still relevant to Western society? Durkheim's ideas are based upon primitive societies, small-scale societies, which he ratcheted up to apply to modern societies. Maybe it's safe to say that this stuff really can't be transposed. And what about the fact that Western societies are now becoming secular, with declining church attendance, declining collective worship? Is this stuff still able to perform its function of gelling people together who aren't even there? Is it so influential? And Durkheim, we said before, looked at small-scale non-literate societies. Today it's far more complex. Whose values are being transmitted by religion? It's safe to say that we now live in a pluralistic society of many different multicultural faiths and traditions. And how can one religion gel all those people together? Quite problematic if you think about it. Bella. Now Bella tries to sort of compensate for this. He does look at multi-faith societies, and he does see how a new kind of religion is actually able to bond people together to bring about social solidarity, and he calls this civil religion. He's what some people call a neo-functionalist, and in his study in America he talks about a civil religion called Americanism. That in America now we have a new overarching source of bonding, a source of culture. It is a kind of faith. If you look at Americanism, there's lots of religious images and phrases that are used. In God we trust, one nation under God. All linked in with promoting national identity. It includes all religions. So whatever your persuasion, as an American, you're part of an umbrella of this source of identity. The common God being worshipped is someone who embraces all Americans. And despite America's social divisions, they tend to be united by that. Great deal of loyalty. Some even say we've got it in the UK. Poppy Day, the death of Diana, the way it brought people together, the Queen's speech on Christmas Day, and again our joint horror at acts of terror. An evaluation of Bella before I move on though is, to what extent are things like nationalism actually about religion? Are they the same as something which is sacred? I'm not so sure. If we go down Bella's path, we can say that something like Nazism was a justifiable faith, civil religion. And I'm not too sure about that one. Parsons picks up on something a little bit different. He talks about how religion helps people to deal with life crises, and this is a very important function for religion. It helps people to cope, to deal with these experiences which could knock us off balance, bring us about with uncertainty and lead to anomie and chaos which would threaten social order. If you think about a funeral, funerals are the death of somebody that we love dearly can have a massive traumatic effect on people. It suddenly plunges people into uncertainty and raises questions about, why are we here? What's the point? But religion does give us comfort. It does answer difficult questions. So when we get questions like what happens to us after death, religion gives us some degree of hope. It does give us some degree of an answer. Religion provides lots of answers to those eternal questions. Why do villains prosper? Why is there suffering? Is there justice? And religion gives us answers. As it's been said, suffering tests a person's faith, punishes them for their sins and gives dignity to those who struggle on. And villains will get their just deserts in the afterlife. This is what religion gives us. It answers those things. It makes things a little bit more certain again. Bronislaw Malinowski in 1954, he also explored this particular functions of religion in terms of life crisis and certainty. He mainly looked at the psychological functions of religion, but they're still social in their consequences. Religion develops as a response to the psychological and emotional needs of man. Nothing at all to do with a god or whatever, it's because they serve a purpose. If you think about situations that make you anxious, uncertain or tense, they threaten social order, stability and social life. He talks about life crises, and our lives are full of these. Birth, puberty, marriage, death, they're all rites of passage. They're all periods of our life when there are moments of potential disruption to our existence and social order. And what religion does, it brings with it a ceremony that minimises the potential disruption with those rituals. Think how a funeral brings its members together. Think how it gives hope to those who've had loss. Think how it helps people carry on. And there are many situations where the outcome is important, but uncertain and uncontrollable. What Malinowski focused on with his study of the Trobriand Islanders was precisely that, uncertainty and control, a need for control. And he uses the example of looking at fishing. When the islanders went fishing in known waters, there was no ritual. But when they went into the open sea, where there was less chance of success, where there's chance of death and not coming home, or chance of not being successful because they didn't know the waters, there was danger, uncertainty, and there was a ritual that preceded those fishing trips. They gave an increase of control to the people, they gave hope, they decreased anxiety and unified the group. You know, it was a little bit like, I suppose, a rabbit's foot being held for good luck during an exam. So bringing these ideas together so far, you could have an evaluation chart like this. What is the main argument of the functionalists? What are their key concepts? Just try and tease out the themes, the concepts. Don't write too much on them. Just pop them in there with bullet points. And then outline the key studies relating to those concepts. What studies illustrate those concepts? And at the end, any relevant evaluation points that you wish to make. That means that the functionalist view is if in an answer we have something to tie together, a paragraph, or depending if it's a functionalist focused paragraph, a series of paragraphs that have got some focus. My argument would be, to a question like this, in what ways is religion beneficial to individuals? I'd take that approach. Make sure the general introduction, Durkheim, Malinowski, Parsons, Bell, with some evaluation points in there as well. And one thing you might find useful is a task like this, trying to connect up these various concepts to the relevant cells on the outside. A recap of just checking the core knowledge. I hope that was useful to get tuned into the functionalist viewpoint, the various theories, their studies and evaluation points, which leads us quite nicely onto where the Marxists step in.